uyitshisa apha enalo msi unyukayo uyitshisela ntoni ukuba kuze kwenzeke ntoni kuthini?
Akuzukwenzeka nto. Hayi, into nayo icacisa amaphupha umuntu xa elele akho nto iza kwenzeka. Hayi.
Okay. And what's the name of this plant?
Ngabe igama lale nto uyitshisileyo yintoni igama layo?
Impepha.
Since Kenny say that it must be clear for our dreams, is there any relationship between this herb and the spirits?
Likhona inxibelelwano. Lapho inxibelelwano abantu njengaxa babehlala apha eKolombeni banezinto zabo ababezifaka or mhlawumbi bala njengaxa ingabantu bahlala ehlathini emaweni.
So are we all supposed to dream tonight and to remember our dreams?
Emandleni enkosi xa ufike ithuba lophupha kamnandi. Yeah. Into uyibone. Yeah.
Pat, how do you feel being back in South Africa and sitting in a cave in the Drakensberg after so many years?
Oh, it's terrific. I can't tell you how terrific it is. It's not only being back in the ambience of a rock shelter and the fire and people, but actually having a Bushman descendant with us just brings the whole thing to life. 40 years ago, when I was doing this work in the Drakensberg, I felt always as if I was just coming too late. There were some of the shelters we came across with paintings. You could see the places where fires had been. You could see the charcoal. You could see the ashes. You could see really disintegrated bedding, but no people to talk to. And I always just felt as if I was too late to really meet the people and ask them what did the paintings mean to them. And so to be able to come back and actually meet a man who is a descendant of the Bush people, who still carries some of the traditions, is just so exciting. Really, it really is fantastic.
Patricia Winnecombe grew up on this farm at the foot of the Drakensberg. This is where her passion for the rock paintings of the Bush people began. The book that she dedicated to them in 1976 has become a standard reference work. Later, Patricia moved to Australia, where she became interested in the indigenous inhabitants there, the Aborigines. The Aborigines still have a vivid relationship to their rock paintings, whereas the Bush people in southern Africa stopped painting about a century ago. Today, they live mostly in areas where there are no rocks. I asked Patricia if she would show her friend and colleague, Megan Bisseler, the place where she spent her childhood. And I asked Megan if she would introduce Patricia to the Bush people she'd known in Namibia and Botswana for so many years. Megan speaks their language, collects their stories, and is actively engaged in fighting for their rights and autonomy.
Among my happiest childhood memories are my brother and I walking up from the house to this shelter and playing Bushman. Oh. And the greatest treat was to be allowed to spend the night out. So we used to come here and light a fire and sleep out. This was the greatest treat. Then it moved on from there where we actually had to dress like bushmen. So the African staff that worked with my father on the farm made us some little bear shoes. They weren't proper bushman things really. They were much more Zulu, but nevertheless we mixed our cultures. And we wore skins, nothing else, just the skins. Margaret Mingy, my school friend, the same. And we would have the fire alight. Nothing was allowed that wasn't what we thought was bushman. And from this site, our playground extended further afield. But all the time one was looking out at the mountains and knowing by this time that the Bushmen had lived in all of this area, that they had roamed here at free will long before settlement of the area by whites and by blacks, and that there had been vast herds of game grazing on these plains. And always I had this great yen to explore further. It was just with me from childhood, to go further, to see what lay beyond. And I just feel so lucky that I was actually able to do that and to follow up the Bushman's story in greater detail. Well, here we are, Megan.
Oh, Pat, it's beautiful.
Mm. Now, this is the site that we kind of moved on to from our childhood playground behind the house.
Mm-hmm.
And this, as we grew older, became part of our playground as well. But this is a very different kind of site from the other one. There's a curious animal here, a bulky animal that looks somewhat hippopotamus-like. It has its mouth open with either a spear penetrating its mouth or it's breathing something out or expelling something. Also on its neck here you can see lines that look like hairs standing up on end. And this is very typical of a depiction of a rain animal. And this figure here, this strange figure, has extremely fine lines emanating from the head. And I used to think it was hair. But when you look at it closely, it's not actually touching the head. So it must be some other emanation.
It might be a real headdress, or it might be representations of lines of force.
Yes.
Some scholars have said that that kind of
or emanations from the head, you know,
yes.
a process of either thought processes or thinking strings or power or whatever.
Pat, tell me how it was when you first started working on this cave.
Well, you know, right at my very first attempts at recording rock art were in fact freehand.
Mm-hmm.
And in those days we went everywhere barefoot. I mean, John and I never wore shoes. We went everywhere barefoot and we had really tough feet.
You must have.
And we hated shoes. So it was just such a casual affair. Little short shorts, little short shirt, you know, and carry something to nibble on, and have a drawing book tucked into my shorts. I never had a rucksack. I had no equipment at all. A drawing book tucked into my shorts, and a pencil. And I simply looked at the art and drew it. But then, once I had done the ones on the farm, I went over the hill to the neighbour and did theirs. And so I sort of moved further and further afield, and then I started looking at the mountains and thinking, oh, just think what's there, you see. So there was this slow progression.
Mabi leads us to the Snow Hill shelter. Here, where the bush people once lived and painted, he, the Zulu healer, would like to honor their spirits. He also wished to invite some of today's bush people to join in the ceremony with him. Frans introduced them to him. They come from Angola and live in the South African province of KwaZulu-Natal. Mabi brings along the ashes of the lamb that he sacrificed at the beginning of his ceremony.
ngathi ngathola umunye umnike mfike kuyena ngencwadi yesesulu ngikhuluma ukuthi siqondeni ngibonani isasenze njani mina sihlangabezene sakhele ubuqili nathi obuthize sibe nendlela zonke
Many of us have come to a place like Africa on a very romantic mission. I know that was true in my own case, and I feel that it's very important to acknowledge that.
And may I ask you what that romantic vision initially was? What brought you to Africa? What stimulated that?
When I really think back on it, Frans, it has to do with the fact that in the southern United States, as you know, there was slavery for a great deal of the time in American history. And my own family was involved in the last bits, I would say, of slavery. Now, this is, of course, way after emancipation. But when I was a very small child, when I was an infant, I was apparently a very difficult child because I was allergic to everything and I screamed all the time. And my mother basically turned me over to my grandparents' cook, who was of African descent. Because my own mother couldn't do anything with me and she gave me to this woman, I basically grew up with a nanny, like children in the 19th century did. And I had a very close, warm bond with this woman. She told me many stories that must have come originally from Africa, and she gave me a warmth that I did not find in any other way in that early part of my life. And I always felt that because of the Africanness of this woman, Lavina Thibodeau, that I would eventually go to Africa and see where the roots of her family came from, because I felt so close to it.
Mabi's ceremony ends with a big celebration. His welcome for the bush people who live in his homeland today is all the more touching to us because we have learnt that young people from his village had tried to insult the bush people with scornful names, as has happened so many times in the past. But Mabi soon put them in their place.
Good morning, siyabingelela sijabula ukunibona phakathi kwekhaya ngongkhuluma nana ke ake sibambela thina samadoda ngicela ukuthi ke ningibhekela itiye labo ophuza lutho bona kakhulu danke
Antonio and the other men in his group were enlisted by the South African Army during the war in Angola for their excellent tracking skills. After the war ended, they were just abandoned and left to their own devices. Today, they are hired by farmers in KwaZulu-Natal to track down cattle thieves in areas which, ironically, used to be Bushman land.
My ouer pa en my pa en my pa se pa wat hulle echt hier so hierdie grond gewas het. Die boere wat oor see gekom, hy nie hier so by hier swart mes gekry. En daarom alles gewas het die mense wat die boere hier so gekry. Wat maak julle hier so? Toe hulle gesê by boere, ons was aan mense wat God hier so gemaakt het. Ons bly so by Berker. En die derde vraag, boere my gevra, bro, waar jy gekry hier klippe?